Season 6, Episode 3, Roger Rabbit, Reconciling Responsibilities. Whose job is it anyway? A cream bun goes a long way for you, Alan teases Trajce when Trajce admits he could never prosecute a baker. Alan describes a work health and safety legal case when a football grandstand roof collapsed during construction. The construction workers were fortunate to avoid significant injuries. Sara regales a story about her drive home from her son's rugby practice when a car sped past theirs whilst travelling up the wrong side of their neighbouring lane. She adds to the story with another event, a car collision that no one wanted to clean up. Whose job is it anyway? Asks Trajce as he examines the confronting idea of false comforts in systems we blindly trust.
Welcome to the system.
Yeah. 1, 2, kid. It's speed. R for D. And we're gonna bust it up like this. I'm crushing empty bourbon cans with my dirty hands, poisoned by devil's weed, dreaming of foreign lands. Ever since my very spark of life, I've been caught in this astrological plot.
Hello, and welcome to the Work Podcast, a series of playful legal dissections on the most curious and alarming events in the world of work. The podcasters Alan Girl, Trajce Svetkovsky and Sara Pazell debate how to craft a better experience of work. Sit back, relax and enjoy. And remember, none of the things we talk about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work.
In a very good day, this glorious sunny Sunday Queensland weather.
It's a beautiful day today, beautiful weather.
Sunny one day, sunnier the next. In fact, let's not overstate it because quite enough interstate migration. So let's play it down.
Evil.
Evil, very evil. So let me ask you this. What's happening?
So much is happening. I've been run off my feet in such a good way, and I keep reminding myself it's a good problem to have when you're so busy and you work for yourself. I have to remind myself this is a good problem to have, but it's exciting. I've got a lot of clarity in my business, and we've been doing some amazing, phenomenal site visits with a lot of empirical evidence data collection in a couple of different industries right now, so I have a lot to talk about.
I want to hear about some of these exciting things. First of all, where have you been?
Oh, all around, mostly Queensland and New South Wales, multiple places. And I mentioned earlier, Trajce, that I was in Kingaroy, and there was the...
Sorry, what was that?
Kingaroy.
Kingaroy.
You went Kingaroy. You're obviously American.
How do you say it?
Kingaroy, mate.
Kingaroy.
No, Kingaroy, mate.
Don't you find that fascinating about Australia? There's so many places where the pronunciation of the location is different to the spelling of the location.
Yeah.
So
like Gundawindi or Wollongabba.
Have you had a Gundy before in Gundawindi? Do you know what a Gundy is?
What's a Gundy?
A Gundy is every single white spirit on the top shelf.
Oh,
I knew that as rocket fuel.
Talk about doing damage.
Gundy.
So I found this bakery, though, on the way to Kingaroy. Kingaroy, mate.
Soften the G.
Yeah, Kinga.
So before Nanango, so up past Kilcoy. So after Kilcoy, on the way to Nanango. Was it a black stump?
A bakery called at the Gumeri Bakery and Coffee Shop, and this is not just a Gumeri. This is not just a Gumeri. This is not just a bakery. I'm just sitting there going. My friend said, "You've got to stop at this bakery." I'm like,
"Wow, why? Why did he do that?"
Ta-da! This is like French patisserie in the middle of nowhere. It is phenomenal. So It is so good. I'm actually going to book a camping trip with my son to go over, even if I just have a Saturday night after gym, to go over so that we can wake up and go to this bakery. It is so good.
Hang on the way to Kingaroy? Or
on the way to, I'm just going to stop at Gumeri. It's worth stopping because of this bakery.
Yep.
Right.
Do you not know this bakery? I'm giving
been to the bakery.
a whole new purpose. And I'm not a baked goods kind of person. Let me just put this out there, right?
I know it very well because my patch was Work Health Safety Queensland they called it Brisbane North Sunshine Coast. So it was as west of Blackall a lot of work in Kingaroy and Nanango because they've got the Taronga power station there.
Oh,
so,
yes.
so there's a fair bit of work. So I know...
Did you ever prosecute this bakery?
I'd never prosecute a bakery. Others might.
You can be bribed. Is that what I'm hearing?
Look, you know.
A cream bun goes a long way for you.
What are you kidding? You're being crusty. Boom, boom.
Dun-dun-dun.
Look, yes. No, well, that's good. Well, so, however, more importantly, what type of work were you doing in Kingaroy?
I have been investigating work design in different systems. I can't disclose all the clients right now.
Stuff.
But,
what kind of stuff? What are you doing?
so I'm looking at everything from the outputs will be job analysis. I'm looking at job design. So that's another second facet using digital analytics, digital technology, aspects like workload management and what's important to you or strategically aligned. Where do efficiencies exist? Where and which tasks could they be done remotely? And which ones have some cost savings potentially, and doing a lot of analytics on that, and then looking at environmental design review, which I'm incredibly excited about. So the good old built environment and what's quite enduring in design strategy. And then the fourth aspect in these initiatives is looking at strategy and systems and a huge widespread review of strategy and systems and whether or not somebody is employing somebody, head office, central office, the entire operational way of being, the fabric of the operations are using cogent design strategies.
Yep.
Right?
And what I love the most about the work that you do is this is all anticipatory work. It's preventative. It's let's get on the front foot and try and make things better rather than fix things later when they break.
And I think of it as inventive work rather than preventive work. So yes, it certainly prevents bad things from happening, but I think of it as inventive because it helps you realize your potential. It really optimizes performance. So it's inventive, it's creative. And
preemptive, could we call it preemptive work?
Preemptive
You want
work,
to preempt anything.
Innovative, transformative. Transformative design is a term I'm using often. I'm doing this also in mining industry that I can speak about because I'm in the middle of writing the research report when Alan called me and reminded me that we had a recording to go to.
Something more important than a mining strategy. Why work podcast session, baby?
Podcast session.
Yeah,
Sorry
man.
if you're listening and you're the monitor for this research report. It's coming. But I've got to say this. I had this conversation with my son, and it's hilarious because I think after how many years of doing this, I'm finally really understanding how to do what I do incredibly well, right? I keep pushing myself, and I'm really reflecting. Like this feels like this report and the methods and what we've achieved feel like the pinnacle of some of my work. And my son sees how hard I work, which is lately is incredibly extensive hours if you're just looking at it in volume and the way things tie together. And we were joking because I studied so much and for so long. We start to calculate 12, 13 years of study, etc., just so that I have the privilege to be able to do very complex work that requires me to work really hard. And so you're going, hang on a minute. What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah, that's a bit...
I don't know how well I'm selling this. I love the intellectual challenge, but I'm like, wow, that just enabled my privilege to do very difficult work. And I say this because I had a client. I was in a call with a prospective client who said, Sara, it's funny, we just issued some referrals to another company that what I would call like level 1 types of fundamental ergonomics type of work. But I didn't think of you because I only think of you for the complex, difficult stuff. But the rest of my team members really want to do some fundamentals and some basics.
Well, hey, it's good to be...
Good. I love being known to be able to solve complex problems, but I've got to say I've got a team of capabilities at different levels. Yes. So send them our way. Anyway,
good.
Alan.
Well, sound very, very busy.
With big brother looking over your shoulder, he's there to mold ya, turn it into a number.
Now, Alan, you have a design case.
Yeah, there's a South Australian case just decided in the last month. And it's interesting because there's a conviction and fine imposed. It's about a football club in South Australia, and they had a grandstand for people to watch the sporting events, and they decided to put a roof over the grandstand. In the process of designing, and of course the builders followed the design, it didn't meet Australian standards and the roof collapsed whilst it was being built. Luckily, the workers who were on top of the roof while it was being built were able to simply slide down off the roof, and none of them suffered serious injuries. But the end result was the designers pleaded guilty and they were convicted and fined. The fines were $50,000 and $30,000 were imposed. And I think it's just really interesting because that's a case that's actually gone the full distance where the designer has ended up being convicted and fined.
And from memory, reading that case, the magistrate was quite scathing in that a simple checklist. There's nothing wrong with the good old-fashioned checklist.
The magistrate said that. I'm not sure if that's a simplistic solution. I'm sure it's well, maybe that's a good question for Sarah, but, you know, a checklist good things when you're doing design?
I would say that's part of system design, but as she said, it's like a spider web. So understanding what cognitive demands...
Lily pond.
You like that? I like the lily pond too.
Yes.
Okay, but when you're talking about disclosing the cognitive demands that are made on people, that's what I'm hearing you say.
So let's unpack that, disclosing the cognitive demands. That is such a mouthful. It's so socio-tech speak. I'm not sure the ordinary witness would understand that.
Well,
what the hell does that mean,
I
Sarah?
think it means the designers have to think about a lot of things.
Yes.
Break it down.
Break it down.
Break it down. You're going to have to break these down because you use a lot of cool, fantastic syntax.
Oh, so do
Trajce,
you.
she's a
You're
cool
like,
girl.
Your nomenclature is through the roof, man.
Trajce's vocab's all over.
Yeah, but tell us about this. You've got my
I
interest.
still remember eudaimonia. We had quite a bit of fun with that one.
Well, that was an instrument, but anyway.
Sounds like one. All right. So what I'm saying is, did the designer think at all about what people must do, what they must think about, and how they might feel when they're dealing with any type of design? If I say it as plain as possible. So what are all the steps that somebody needs to remember? And you said a checklist.
The cognitive?
Right?
Well, in this
demands.
case, it is, you know, when you design something, how will it be built? How will the people actually assemble this thing that's being designed?
So there's the manufacture, there's the use, and then there's maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes in design. So because maintenance is always tail end and never remembered, always forgotten, right?
Do you think time constraints and pressures and people, because they're under the pump, that they're not having time to go through this cognitive process or through these steps adequately and sufficiently? Or because to me it
all
makes sense
kinds
what
of
you're saying.
reasons.
You make the what ifs. The what ifs make sense.
There's cognitive biases on how things should be done.
Sure.
There are demands for production demands. There are habits. So if design isn't intuitive, you fall back to something that might be habitual, and then you're confronted when it's not, like the toilet seat, right? Yeah. You know, so there's all kinds of complex issues on how people might perceive and think about things, and as well as sensory processing. You can't assume that there's a homogenized approach to regulating your sensory needs and processing the world in the same way.
You raise an interesting point, Trajce, and it's not unique to this particular field, but if you're a small to medium-sized enterprise, so if you're just like a little firm of engineers who are doing design work, and you get a big conviction and fine, that's a business buster. So, you know, taking shortcuts can end up costing you your entire business. So I think it's really important to press yourself to go just a little bit further than what you would like to.
There's that just a little bit again.
Yeah, that's it.
Push it.
I think you have to. It's funny because I guess in the design universe, because you haven't built it, you're not the fabricator of that still. You haven't made so. You're still in that abstract universe, even with all the 3D rendering. But of course, you've got to visualize this thing not only being built, but what could happen if this thing wasn't built right and it fell down? So, if your monument falls down.
And when you put the humans in it and on it and around it, what happens?
Yeah.
And even before applying things like the human readiness levels or any other type of standards and guidance and prompts on human systems integration, because there's many more that came around and before and are going to continue to come from this, fundamental design issue is what's the purpose and what's the context of use, right? That goes before you're testing any merits of actual artifacts or systems. What's the purpose? What's the context of use? That helps you understand it more and more.
Yeah, I think generally my understanding would be I think designers would have that covered. Like most engineers would understand.
Organizations do not.
But they do not. So the human,
Organizations do not, right?
So the human may get it, like that expert, that content expert, that learned engineer, for example, would understand that. But does the organisation?
And if the organisation or whoever is commissioning that designer does not do that, the designer has a very difficult time understanding their brief. And assumptions can be made, and assumptions then can lead to things going awry, right? If it's not well articulated, which is your fundamental design discovery and your development of problem-based design statements as well as opportunities that you want to have realized. That is the biggest missing piece, I find, when you go down the trajectory of when design goes wrong, if you will.
And it's funny because you look at the consequence, that reminds me it was a prosecution, but I withdrew it, and it ended up being an enforceable undertaking. It involved 80-ton bridge girders, so there's big concrete pylons where you put your overpasses across, and the calculation for the temporary bolts to put these big girders in place, it was just miscalculated. A junior engineer was involved. His work wasn't overseen by the senior engineer. I can't remember whether that was inadvertence or just whether there was a miscalculation. Anyway, it was wrong, wrong full stop. We know it was wrong because at time of installation, all the rivets, all the bolts just popped out, and this thing literally went. And luckily, no workers died. A couple had some fractured ankles jumping. But it was squarely a design consideration, and it was simply an error. The bolts should have been 45 millimetres, they were 25 millimetres. And that error ran all the way to the day and when the thing manifested into something potentially catastrophic. So the responsibility, I think that's our key word today, capital R, the responsibility on those people creating from paper is huge.
Welcome to the system.
Roger Rabbit responsibility, the 3 R's. That's right. I'm just hearing that. So what happens in road construction, right? What happens in government and road construction, or, any big capital, any infrastructure, when the government constrains the funds available to design what designers might say, was essential. Like I've heard about designers of some of the roads and the bypasses and the bridges in Brisbane, and designers have said, I told them that you actually needed 3 lanes, and you hear that all the time saying, I said this, but they didn't want to pay for that. So, because I have a couple of road stories to tell you just in this last week and a half, all right? So bear with me, and then you can add
on the road?
I'm on the road a lot. I'm another R word. I'm a rugby mum.
I'm going to call you Will.
My son has been playing rugby for school and club. He's a Swan, right? Maroochydore Swans. Woo! Right? And so I'm at rugby usually because he is at rugby 5 nights a week. That is my life. So let me tell you.
That's a lot.
Union or league?
Another R, here's a reality.
Rugby league or rugby union?
Union. He's a union boy, but he's played league and he's played touch and anything footy related he's happy with, right? Yeah. So the other night, this is a tangent, I'm good with this, but the other night I was outside the rugby field, the R, sitting in my car, the dog's photobombing in the back of the car because juggled on my knees is a laptop. Right? Because I have a webinar podcast combo interview with Barry Kirby in the UK. He runs a great Human Factors podcast. And I've got the laptop juggled. It's getting dark outside, so I've got to try and manage the lighting while I'm talking to him. And then it starts pissing down raining. I said to him, all right, I'm going to try as best I can in these constraints hopefully my internet continues on my phone through my computer with the laptop on my knees to get this done for you tonight. That's the realities of my world right now with 5 nights a week of rugby. So it was a 2 times coming home from rugby, right? The most recent one was coming home, and in fact, I I was delayed in collecting my son because I was attending a human factors gathering that is new. Thank you to Gemma Reed at University of Sunshine Coast Innovation Center, because she coordinated a gathering for human factors practitioners. So rare. We're so isolated. Nice to get together. And I left that gathering, collected my son, drove home. And I was driving down a road that is a one-way road, but it has 2 lanes, all right? Picture this, one-way road, 2 lanes. There's a concrete barrier before you get to the other road, other side, the other direction. And I'm going over the hill, and I was not speeding. I actually saw speed traps out. I was complying with speed, wanted my brownie points, all right? But as I'm going down the road and I'm tired, I'm actually feeling a little, I'm thinking, oh, gosh, I'm a little fatigued, but here we are. And then, you know how your brain sees something and you're surprised and people think, why don't you react differently? But it's unusual and it's not the context that you expect. So you're trying to reconcile reality, double R, Roger Rabbit, reconcile this reality. And I'm going, what the? Did that just happen? So then I look in my rearview mirror, and yes, as I'm traveling down in the left of 2 lanes, one way, a car is barreling right next to me, going up the one-way road the wrong way, barreling right past me. And there's a concrete barrier.
Happens too often.
How could they have missed that? So I'm thinking, holy, I have just missed a car that could have potentially been in my lane. And, like deer in headlights, you're just surprised. You don't expect that. You don't plan for that eventuality. Yeah. And it went right past me, and I looked in my rearview mirror, and yes, another car was coming, this car traveling up where it shouldn't be traveling, an upsy, not a downsy, was swerving, and the other car going down started swerving, and you hope they swerve in the right direction to miss one another rather than, oops, go both in the same direction and, bonk heads. And there just at that second happened to be a short break in that concrete barrier so that he could pull into the side and miss a head-on collision. Right? That wakes you up again. That wakes you up. The second incident, all right? So how did that happen? Now, let's think about road construction. How was that designed? How would that even be possible? Was that eventuality considered when you have such a barrier protecting the roads, right? But there are some little bypass, little side roads that must have come in from that way. The second is I'm going down up an arterial that's regularly used, right? This, you could almost title this Trajce as "Whose Job Is It Anyway?" Right? So I'm traveling, again, after rugby, traveling up this arterial, commonly used in the area, and it is uphill and steep, and it has a white line one way, right? Do not cross the other line. Road rule. And as I'm driving, my brain's going, what's that? Is that a body? And my son's going, is that a dog? Right? You just start to see this big black shape. There's very poor lighting on the road, so you can't quite tell. And then as you approach, you see tire tread blown out and bits of car and shrapnel and things all over. And so the only way to avoid this is to veer in the wrong lane. Otherwise, run all over it, cause another accident, don't know. So you have to quickly veer and just hope that no other car is coming immediately downhill. I do. I immediately call the police services, right? We got through it. Okay, we were unharmed. Again, lucky. I've got 2. I'm going my third time a charm. Please don't let me change my luck right now, given these exposures. So I called the police. And I explained to them what I've just encountered. I said, I clearly said, it is dark. I'm with my son and my dog. I do not feel safe to pull over. And I do not have cones. I do not have tape. I do not have floodlights. And I don't have warning lights. I don't feel safe for us to clear this. And I sorely believe that you should have someone come out to clear this. And they go, oh, well, what kind of road is it? Is it a main road? I said, I've just told you exactly where it was. Is it owned by Department of Main Roads? I'm like, is that my job to figure that out? I've told you the location. I've told you where it is. She goes, why don't you just write an email to council? I said, it is happening right here, right now, and it will likely cause a collision where someone could die, and I am trying to report this to you. Let me repeat this as clear as I can. And I went through this, and I clearly said how I believe it could cause a severe accident or a fatality this evening, and I strongly urge you to speak to your superior officer, whoever's in charge, and at least let them make that decision. Please, I hope you're recording this call. So what did I do? I get, I'm home and I call the council. And the council too is like, isn't that the police's job? I go, I actually bothered to pause to search. I didn't go online like they told me. I made a phone call and I called the council after hours. I found an after hours line. I didn't know there was one. And when I explained the situation, and again, I said, I'm not going to get off this call unless I really understand that someone somehow is going to coordinate. Why don't you call the police and we'll figure this out between the two of you? Whose job is it anyway, right?
To clean the debris.
But I'm afraid that someone will get hurt tonight.
Yeah.
And there was a car pulled over, but I couldn't see. They didn't have their hazard lights on. I don't know if they were part of that incident. And I don't know if they were okay or not okay, right? You really need to check this out. I'm not going to leave my son home alone, and I don't feel safe to do this. I could get hit. And so I got a call an hour later. And so congratulations to the Sunshine Coast Council, because I got a call an hour later and they went out and inspected. Now, I don't know if the police bothered then to go out, because by the time he got there an hour later, it was cleared. I don't know if the person that caused this cleared it. I have no idea how, but at least he bothered to drive out and have a look. But I had to do all the advocacy.
And they rang you to tell you.
They rang to tell me, but I had to do all the advocacy or it would not have happened that evening.
The takeaway out of all of that, apart from the scenario, is don't we place, and this really segues all the way back to the initial concept to completion, don't we place so much trust, or we have to, in humans?
In systems, and so let's just say an accident, a collision happened and a fatality happened. Did they say, well, the girl didn't really tell us how the lady didn't tell us how severe it was? So, who do they blame, right?
Did you get a name of the council worker? Because we should really call out a name and say she did a good job.
Yeah, good job. I hope you're listening.
Yeah. So it took a lot of, as you said, advocacy on your part. But your very first scenario, like we trust that people will stay on the right side of the road. So we place so much trust in every single thing we do.
I think it's probably the most dangerous part of our lives is when we drive on the road.
Yeah. But now I'm extending it to we trust that the travelator will not collapse, or we trust that the door was locked.
So the building screws are the right screws to hold up the structure, right?
Yeah, the right structure. So no, this key word is trust. Like from that designer who's going to sit there in his or her office, right through to the driver who could be that designer coming back from working 12 hours designing bolts. Every single aspect of our life is based on we trust, faith that another human will be doing the right thing
and designing properly. That's right. The system works. With the ignorant bliss of the system working.
Design for living or living for design.
Dun-dun-dun. Love it.
That's going to be,
or designing so we keep living.
Designed to keep living.
I want to thrive too, boys. I want to thrive, not just thinking, oh, you go home safe today.
Thrive. I just want to stay alive after all the stuff you've told me. But Sarah, I need to ask one thing before we end this session. Let's get back to your son's rugby. You've got the laptop. You're in the car. You've got the dog at the back.
Yes.
Did you have a meat pie or a sausage roll?
Oh, hot chips.
Ah, thank you.
Does
Perfect.
that still qualify?
With salt and vinegar and sauce, or?
No,
some of our readers, listeners, would be thinking about this. I know
I've not had salt and vinegar chips in a million years. It feels like, and so now you're going to get that craving. And I don't normally crave that, but because you've said that, I'll go.
Double vinegar,
tonight
salt.
I need something.
Who makes the best meat pies now?
Yeah, I don't know. Can we get one of our listeners to tell us?
Okay, so because my son had a sleepover at the rugby club the other night.
For State of Origin? Was it like part of the thing?
They had a buy, so they ended up managing the tuck shop and helping the cheer on the open teams, right? And then they slept over in the clubhouse. So it was just a special event. So he tells me about a kid, age 14, who that night ate successivally in sequence 13 or 14 meat pies in a row.
Get out of town.
And then still had pasta later. And I'm like, I thought my boy was eating a lot these days. I would not be able to afford to raise that child.
We're talking party pies or
no,
the real deal?
Your son would have to eat a lot because
even 14 party pies would be a lot, right? But no, these were regular meat pies from the tuck shop.
Like half a salmon and that kind of stuff. Like but he won't do the
no junk food. No, not even a couple of hot chips.
Oh, you're during exams. It's sort of a treat, but no. Which reminds me, which we'll talk about in the next story, Slovenia.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Why Work. You've been listening to Trajce, Sara and Alan. And if you'd like to know more about some of the things we've talked about today, please subscribe, and we'd be more than happy to provide you with information, names of cases, and other things that may interest you. Please be aware that none of the matters we've talked about today should be construed as legal advice or any other type of advice. We're just here to talk about all things related to work. See you next time.
What you thinking? You jumped up in the system. Welcome to the system. Welcome to the system. Welcome to the system. Yeah. Welcome to the system. Here we go. Welcome to the system.